100% 弱点撃破。すぐいやガツンとくるやつでいこう。ふふ今度は私を楽しませてくれる？このスピードで？遅すぎる。
Hey guys, today we're going over Silverwolf, what her kit does and how she works. So Silverwolf is the last featured character for me to cover, featured being the characters that we know are going to be separate from the standard banner. So in the coming days I'll be uploading a video on going over all the featured characters and maybe who you might want to save for. It's gonna be a tough choice because I love all the featured 5-stars that I've been able to play with. Alright, so Silverwolf is a 5-star quantum type and she specializes in debuffing enemies. The higher level she gets, the more ability she gets and the more debuffs, and they just kind of like exponentially just stack on top of each other, like more and more and more. Silverwolf just unlocks a lot more ways to apply debuffs. Alright, so let's take a look at her kit. Alright, so as usual, her traces are not going to be the same values that I read. I have her pretty high level, so the numbers I read out will be her level 1 base percentages. So in order to understand her other abilities, we have to go over her talent first actually. So her talent goes with her other abilities, and when she attacks, she can inflict 3 types of bugs. And these bugs are reduce attack, reduce defense, and reduce speed. The original values of these are 10%, so you can reduce attack, defense, or speed by 10% whenever you inflict a bug. And then when Silverwolf attacks an enemy, for every debuff they have, it increases her damage by 20%, and this stacks up to 5 times. So the more bugs you stack on an enemy, the more damage she does. Alright, so let's take a look at her basic, because it isn't the normal basic attack where it just does 50% to a normal enemy. It does 50% to an enemy with a base chance to inflict a random bug for 3 turns. This base chance is 65%. So her basic does 50% of her attack to the enemy, and then 65% base chance to inflict a random bug, which is attack, speed, or defense decrease. These bugs last for 3 turns usually, and ignore these that you see below this line for these other skills because these are the bonus abilities, which we will get to later. Alright, next looking at her skill. So her skill does 70% of her attack as quantum damage to a single enemy, and then it has a 75% base chance to impose a weakness of a random ally's type on the enemy for 3 turns. Along with this, it reduces their damage resistance to that type by 20%. So for example, if you apply a wind weakness to an enemy, they'll not only take more wind damage, but it'll be easier to break them with wind damage. All of this counts as 1 debuff towards your counter, so this weakness and then this damage resistance is not 2 debuffs, it all counts as 1 debuff, as far as like stacking up these debuffs for her. Okay, next looking at her ultimate. Alright, so this does 180% of her attack as quantum damage to a single target, and then if that enemy is already debuffed, it does extra 24% of her attack as quantum damage for each debuff up to 5 times. So you can see how stacking these debuffs on enemies adds up damage a lot. Also, there's 100% base chance to cause entanglement, and then what this does is delays the enemy's action by 40%, as well as does 1 turn of quantum damage over time, which is equal to 48% of her attack. So, quick recap of her ultimate. 180% of her attack to an enemy, does 100% base chance to cause entanglement. This does 48% of quantum damage over time for 1 turn, delays the enemy's action by 40%, and on top of that, for every debuff that the enemy has before you attack, it does an additional 24% of her attack as quantum damage, up to 5 times. A lot of text, a lot of stacking, a lot of things going on. Damage, entanglement, more damage for the debuffs, and then there's quantum damage over time at the end of that. Alright, lastly, her technique. Her technique is an ambush skill. Immediately attacks the enemy, and then it ignores whatever weakness type those enemies are and depletes the toughness of all enemies. So if any of those enemies' weakness is broken, they become entangled, which is entanglement from her ultimate. Alright, quickly, let's look at her bonus abilities and her extra stats that she gets. Alright, quickly, we'll just go around. We have crit damage, max HP, crit damage, effect hit rate, max HP, effect hit rate, crit damage, effect hit rate, crit damage. And for her bonus abilities, level 1, when she uses her skill, if the enemy has 3 or more debuffs already, weakness implant is guaranteed. So if you remember, the weakness implants is this base chance. At level 1, this is a 75% base chance. So instead of having a base chance plus like your effect hit rate plus the enemy's resistance, it's just guaranteed to implant a weakness. Her next bonus ability is her basic attack has a 65% base chance to implant an additional bug in the enemy. So her basic attack already has a chance to inflict a bug, and then it has another chance to inflict a second bug. And her last bonus ability, when she's hit, there's a 100% base chance to implant a random bug in the attacker. As you can see, all these bugs count as separate debuffs, which all count towards a stack of some sort for one of her other abilities. So it all compounds on each other. Alright, next we'll look at her light cone. Her path is the Nihility. Her 5-star light cone is called Incessant Rain. Basically, what her 5-star light cone does is inflicts enemies with Aether Code every round. 100% base chance to do this. It's kind of like a bug in itself, but it doesn't take effect until that enemy is broken. So when their weakness breaks, the Aether Code self-destructs, and it does 80% of the wearer's attack to the enemy. These Aether Codes can stack, so if there's one enemy on the field, in each turn Silverwolf is up, it'll put one Aether Code in this enemy per turn, and then finally when you break it, it'll do 80% of her attack for each Aether Code that is in the enemy. On top of this Aether Code thing, when she's attacking an enemy with 3 or more debuffs, she does damage equivalent to 40% of her attack. It's kind of a lot. I know a lot of people probably won't be going for her 5-star light cone. It's kind of like rolling for weapons in Genshin. It just may not be worth it for a lot of people. So an alternative that we do have is called Good Night and Sleep Well. It's a 4-star, and it increases damage to enemies with debuffs. And then for each debuff the enemy has, increases her damage by 12% up to 3 times. It's easy for Silverwolves to get these debuffs stacked, so it can increase her damage up to 36%, and this also applies to damage over time. So this goes with her debuffs and her damage over time from her ultimate. Alright, we'll take a look at her Eidolon levels next. So for level 1, it increases bugs duration for 1 turn, and then whenever an enemy's weakness is broken, she has a 65% base chance to inflict a random bug on the target. A bug's base duration is 3 turns, so each bug will last for 4 turns at Eidolon level 1. Alright, level 2, when an enemy enters battle, it reduces their effect resistance by 30% for 2 turns. This helps out with her effect hit rate of all of her abilities. Level 4, when she uses her ult, for every debuff that you're using your ultimate on, she regens 8 energy up to 5 times. So if you have those debuffs stacked on an enemy, you use your ult, you'll regain a lot of that energy for using your ult. And lastly, for level 6, the duration of weaknesses implanted in enemies has no turn limit. This is when you use her skill and it puts a random weakness of your ally on the enemy. This having no turn limit is kind of crazy because weakness implants last for 3 turns usually, so you can just keep using your skill until you get whatever necessary weakness you need on the enemy. Basically, when you use Silverwolf, it doesn't really matter what the weakness the enemies are because you'll eventually implant a weakness that your allies can fight with anyway. Alright, that's it for Silverwolf's kit. Now let's hop into a fight and see how her abilities work. Alright. So we're hopping in a fight with Silverwolf and MC on fire because none of these enemies have a fire weakness, just to show how her skill works. So we're gonna use her technique, and if it breaks any of the enemies, and it's going to impose the entanglement effect. We're gonna use her technique. Breaks these two, so now they have entanglements. So let's take a look at that really quick. So when they're no longer stunned, they're going to take quantum damage when they come back. So Silverwolf's E is going to put a weakness, and it's going to be fire because it's the only character we have. So now this enemy is weak to fire, and this lasts for 3 turns. Also, with our extra abilities, we can basic attack, and it's gonna pretty much guaranteed to implant 1 bug, and then there's a roughly 65% chance to implant another bug. I don't know if her effect hit rate affects this secondary bug chance. See, alright, we just hit him with 2 bugs. So now let's look at the debuffs on this main guy. This main guy has 2 bugs. So quickly hit him with a Q again. Another bug. So it didn't proc the second one, but it added one more bug with that basic. So now we use an ultimate. It's gonna do a lot of things. It's gonna do entanglement, it's gonna do regular damage, and it's gonna do extra damage for each bug that's here up to 5 times.
2倍速ってこんなもん？
Here we go. 11k, not too bad. And these bugs stay as well, so it does damage for those bugs, but it doesn't like remove them after. So that's pretty cool.
すぐ餌にかかる。
So now we can use our skill on like this guy, for example, and it's gonna put fire weakness. Except it didn't work because he's dead.
私を楽しませてくれる？
We'll try it on this guy again. Because our weakness, our fire weakness ran out. So if this doesn't kill, it should put fire weakness. Oh, well, he's dead too, so. there goes the counter. But as you can see, Silver Wolf just keeps stacking those debuffs, and then for each debuff, she just does more and more damage, and it just like stacks on top of each other. Okay, that's it for the overview of Silver Wolf. A lot of things happen with her kit. I hope everything I explained made sense, but if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try my best to answer them. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitch. Anyways, thanks for watching. See ya.